Every single human being alive today carries the genetic memory of Africa. For the vast majority of our evolutionary history, every human walking on Earth had deeply pigmented dark skin. Yet today, our species displays a breathtaking spectrum of shades, from deep obsidian black to pale porcelain white. For centuries, people falsely assumed this change took hundreds of thousands of years. Modern ancient DNA sequencing, however, revealed a shocking discovery. Light skin is one of the newest evolutionary adaptations in human biology. 10,000 years ago, during the Stone Age, early Europeans still had dark skin and striking blue eyes. So what triggered this radical, rapid biological transformation across continents? The answer is a high-stakes evolutionary tug-of-war between two vital vitamins. To uncover why human skin changed color, we first have to travel back 2 million years. Before early humans became dark-skinned, their ancestors actually had pale skin beneath thick body fur. Chimpanzees, our closest living genetic relatives, have pinkish-white skin under their hair. When our ancestors transitioned from shaded forests to open, scorching savanna grasslands, they encountered a severe physiological crisis: overheating during prolonged running. To cool their massive calorie-hungry brains while running in the African heat, humans evolved millions of microscopic eccrine sweat glands across their entire bodies. And to allow sweat to evaporate efficiently, our species shed its thick coat of body fur. Bare skin solved the problem of heat stroke, but created a catastrophic new danger. The equatorial African sun bathes the Earth in relentless, high-intensity ultraviolet radiation. Without fur, intense ultraviolet light penetrated deep into the dermis layer of the skin, destroying a crucial, fragile nutrient circulating in the bloodstream: folate, or vitamin B9. Folate is the absolute biochemical cornerstone of human reproduction and survival. In pregnant mothers, severe folate deficiency causes devastating neural tube defects in infants. In men, ultraviolet destruction of folate severely impairs healthy reproductive vitality. An unpigmented, hairless human on the equator would quickly face reproductive collapse. Natural selection responded with one of the most powerful shields in nature: melanin. Specialized skin cells called melanocytes began pumping out dense packages of eumelanin. Eumelanin is an extraordinary natural polymer that absorbs 99% of UV radiation. It prevented the destruction of folate, protected skin cells, and saved humanity. Around 1.2 million years ago, every human on Earth carried dark, highly pigmented skin. The gene responsible for this universal dark pigmentation is called MC1R. For over a million years in Africa, the MC1R gene remained fiercely protected by natural selection. Any mutation that caused lighter skin in equatorial Africa was quickly weeded out, because individuals with lighter skin suffered folate depletion and failed to reproduce. Dark skin was not merely an aesthetic trait, it was an impenetrable solar armor. It allowed humans to run, hunt, and forage under the most brutal sun on the planet. For over 100,000 years, this biological balance was completely harmonious. The sun provided warmth and melanin protected the cellular nutrients. Then, roughly 70,000 years ago, small bands of Homo sapiens did something daring. They walked out of Africa. As these early migrants traveled through the Middle East, into Central Asia and Europe, the environmental physics of sunlight completely, radically changed. In northern latitudes, the curvature of the Earth forces sunlight to travel at an angle. Solar rays must pass through a vastly thicker layer of atmosphere before reaching the ground. This filtered out almost all ultraviolet B radiation for 6 months of the year. And here lies the great biological paradox of human skin. While too much UV radiation destroys vital folate in the circulation, a certain amount of UVB radiation is absolutely essential to synthesize vitamin D3. Vitamin D is not just a nutrient, it is a master steroid hormone. It allows our intestines to absorb calcium and build strong, dense bones. Without adequate vitamin D, children develop rickets, soft, curved, fragile bones. In women, severe vitamin D deficiency deforms the pelvic birth canal, making natural childbirth impossible and leading to severe labor complications. In dark northern latitudes, deeply pigmented skin became a massive handicap. Melanin acted like an SPF 50 sunscreen on a dark winter day in Europe. The very shield that saved human lives in Africa was now suffocating them in the north. Natural selection was forced to adjust the dial on the human thermostat. As humans pushed deeper into the frigid latitudes of Ice Age Eurasia, they encountered a world where sunlight was virtually non-existent for months. Between November and March, north of 40 degrees latitude, the angle of the sun is so low that the atmosphere absorbs 100% of UVB rays. Even if you stood completely naked in the snow at noon in London or Moscow, your skin could not produce a single molecule of vitamin D for 5 whole months. Furthermore, humans in the north couldn't walk around without clothing anyway. Sub-zero temperatures forced hunters to wear multi-layered, airtight fur suits. 95% of the human body was permanently wrapped in thick hides. The surface area of skin exposed to available sunlight was almost zero. How on earth did these early dark-skinned European hunters survive without rickets? When geneticists sequenced the DNA of Western European hunter-gatherers, they discovered a profound mystery that upended 50 years of anthropology. Europeans did not turn white as soon as they arrived in the snowy north. For over 35,000 years in Europe, our ancestors remained dark-skinned. From the peak of the last ice age all the way to the Mesolithic period, the people living in Spain, France, Britain, and Germany had dark brown to black skin. The most famous proof of this is the Cheddar Man found in Somerset, England. Living roughly 10,000 years ago, around 8,000 BCE, Cheddar Man's genome revealed he possessed dark brown pigmentation, dark curly hair, and piercing brilliant blue eyes. This exact genetic combination was widespread across ancient European hunter-gatherers. How did Cheddar Man and his ancestors maintain strong, dense bones without pale skin? The secret was their extraordinary, nutrient-rich prehistoric diet. Hunter-gatherers were top apex predators consuming vast quantities of animal organ meat. Wild game liver, bone marrow, oily river trout, and marine fish are packed with vitamin D. A single serving of wild salmon or seal liver provides thousands of units of vitamin D. Because their diet was overflowing with preformed vitamin D from fatty meat and fish, early European hunters had zero evolutionary pressure to lose their protective melanin. They got their vitamin D from their bellies, not from the low northern sun. Dark skin continued to protect their folate levels during intense summer hunts, while their carnivorous diet completely eliminated the threat of rickets. For tens of thousands of years, this meat and fish diet created a perfect evolutionary equilibrium. So what broke this ancient dietary equilibrium? What catastrophic change in the human menu suddenly forced our skin to turn white? The answer was the single most disruptive event in human history: the agricultural revolution. Around 10,000 years ago, in the Fertile Crescent of the Middle East, humans abandoned their nomadic spears and started planting domesticated wheat, barley, and peas. Agriculture allowed populations to explode from dozens to tens of thousands. It produced mountains of surplus calories and built the first great cities. But for human biology, the switch to farming was a nutritional catastrophe. Instead of eating 80 different species of wild game, fish, berries, and organ meats, Neolithic farmers ate 90% boiled grain porridge 3 times a day. Wheat and barley contain almost zero vitamin D. Even worse, grains are rich in phytic acid, a chemical compound that binds to dietary calcium, preventing the human gut from absorbing what little calcium was available in food. Suddenly, the dietary vitamin D pipeline that kept dark-skinned Europeans alive was completely instantly severed. Within a few generations, Neolithic farming populations in northern Europe faced a bone crisis. Children grew up with soft, twisting spines and curved leg bones. Young women faced severe labor complications during childbirth because their pelvic bones softened. When geneticists examined ancient DNA from hunter-gatherers across Europe, they realized that Cheddar Man was not an isolated genetic anomaly. From the Labrana skeleton in Spain to Lochbour in Luxembourg, every single hunter-gatherer genome sequenced between 14,000 and 7,000 BCE showed the exact same genetic profile: dark skin and blue or green eyes. This means that for thousands of years, European identity looked nothing like it does today. Blue eyes actually evolved before light skin in Western Europe. A single genetic mutation near the OCA2 gene arose around 10,000 years ago, turning down melanin production in the iris while leaving the skin dark. This created an ancient population with deeply pigmented skin and light eyes. Meanwhile, across the Scandinavian peninsula and Eastern Europe, a different hunting population evolved a completely separate solution. Eastern and Scandinavian hunter-gatherers carried a mix of light-skin variants, inherited from ancient North Eurasian populations who adapted to subarctic light. Yet in Western and Central Europe, dark skin remained the dominant norm. As long as humans survived on wild game and river fish, melanin was safe. Their bodies were saturated with dietary vitamin D from animal fat. They had no biological need to lose their protective melanin armor. Then, around 6,500 BCE, a massive demographic tidal wave hit Europe. Early Neolithic farmers from ancient Anatolia began expanding westward. These Anatolian farmers brought with them wheat, barley, sheep, goats, and a completely new genetic profile for human skin pigmentation. Unlike the dark-skinned European hunters who ate meat and fish, Anatolian farmers lived on a strict, grain-heavy agricultural diet. They consumed very little wild meat and almost zero oily marine fish. Because their grain diet lacked vitamin D and blocked calcium absorption, These farming populations faced an extreme life-or-death selective pressure. Individuals whose skin could not produce vitamin D from the sun suffered. Only individuals with genetic mutations that stripped away melanin survived. Natural selection acted with brutal, unprecedented speed. A single key gene mutation began sweeping through agricultural populations. The mutation known as SLC24A5, specifically the alanine to threonine variant. This single genetic typo drastically reduced the size and number of melanosomes. It lightened skin pigmentation by roughly 30 to 40% on its own. Another critical mutation in the SLC45A2 gene soon followed, further reducing melanin production in skin, hair, and eyes. These mutations acted like clearing the tinted glass from a window. Every single photon of scarce northern UVB light could now penetrate the skin, transforming cholesterol into life-saving vitamin D3 even in weak winter sun. Farmers carrying the light skin mutation produced strong, straight bones. Their children survived the winter without developing crippling bone curves. Their mothers survived childbirth because their pelvic bones remained wide and strong. Light skin was not an upgrade in beauty or intellect. It was an emergency biochemical adaptation to survive a deficient grain diet. If humans had remained hunter-gatherers eating wild salmon and liver, Europeans today might still have dark skin and blue eyes, just like Cheddar Man. Agriculture demanded pale skin and evolution delivered, and the transformation of humanity was only half complete. As Anatolian farmers spread across the Mediterranean and Central Europe, they encountered the indigenous dark-skinned hunter-gatherers. For centuries, these two distinct human populations lived side by side. Over generations, they intermarried, traded, and blended their genomes. Yet, even with Anatolian farmer ancestry spreading across Europe, modern European skin pigmentation was still not fully formed. Around 3000 BCE, 5,000 years ago, a third massive migration began. From the vast Eurasian steppes entered the Yamnaya pastoralists. The Yamnaya were nomadic cattle herders who had mastered horse riding and metallurgy. They brought with them the Indo-European languages, wheeled ox wagons, and another distinct cocktail of pigmentation and lactase persistence genes. The Yamnaya carried a mix of intermediate skin pigmentation alleles, including high frequencies of the HERC2 gene for light eyes. When Yamnaya pastoralists mixed with Neolithic farmers and indigenous hunters, the modern European genetic blueprint was finally assembled. It took three entirely separate human populations over 40,000 years to produce the modern spectrum of European skin, hair, and eye colors. Meanwhile, on the other side of the planet, an identical process occurred in East Asia. East Asian populations also evolved light skin independently from Europeans. When northern Chinese populations adopted intensive millet and rice farming, they suffered the exact same dietary vitamin D crisis as European farmers. In response, East Asians evolved light skin through completely different genes. While Europeans mutated the SLC24A5 gene, East Asians developed distinct mutations in the OCA2 and MFSD12 genes. This is one of the most stunning examples of convergent evolution in biology. Two populations, separated by thousands of miles of impassable mountains, faced the same challenge: lack of sunlight and a deficient grain diet, and both independently stripped away melanin to synthesize vitamin D. What about indigenous populations in the high Arctic, like the Inuit? The Inuit live in the extreme north, above 65 degrees latitude, yet they maintain medium brown, deeply pigmented skin. Why didn't natural selection turn the Inuit pale white? Because the Inuit never adopted agriculture. Their traditional diet is almost 100% marine fat, fish, and liver. They consume so much dietary vitamin D every single day that their bodies never needed to lighten their skin to absorb sunlight. In fact, pale skin would have been dangerous on Arctic sea ice, where intense glare reflecting off snow would cause severe folate breakdown. The Inuit proved beyond all doubt that skin color is driven by diet and latitude, not by race, superiority, or time. Skin color is simply a biological solar panel. In regions with intense solar energy, the panel is tinted dark to prevent damage. In regions with weak solar energy and poor diets, the tint is cleared to let light in. It is that simple, that practical, that elegant. Every shade of human skin is a magnificent, life-saving piece of engineering, and the story of how it changed is written in the blood of every person alive today. A story of survival, migration, and the relentless quest for balance. The balance between the sun in the sky and the life in our veins. When we step back and look at the entire tree of human evolution, we realize that human skin color is one of the most flexible traits in our biology. Anthropologist Nina Jablonski has mapped the global distribution of skin colors against satellite measurements of ground-level ultraviolet radiation. The correlation between latitude, UV exposure, and indigenous skin tone is almost 100%. Wherever UV radiation is consistently high throughout the year, Human populations maintain dense, protective eumelanin pigmentation. Wherever UV radiation drops below the critical threshold for winter vitamin D synthesis, human populations independently evolved lighter skin to avoid bone disease. This means that skin color can reverse itself over evolutionary time. If a light-skinned population migrated to equatorial Africa and lived without sunscreen, natural selection over dozens of millennia would gradually darken their skin again. And if a dark-skinned population migrated to northern Europe without dietary vitamin D, natural selection would strip away their melanin to protect their bones. Skin color is not an immutable permanent mark of racial destiny. It is an ephemeral, temporary biological reaction to local solar geography. It takes only about 100 to 200 generations, roughly 5,000 years, for human skin to fully adapt to a new climate. In the grand scale of human existence, 5,000 years is the blink of an eye. For 97% of our history, modern races did not exist. We were all dark-skinned, nomadic hunters carrying spears across open lands. The superficial differences that divide modern societies today, skin shade, hair texture, eye shape, and eye color, are nothing more than recent skin-deep adaptations to local weather and diet. Beneath the epidermis, every human being has the exact same red blood, the exact same 23 pairs of chromosomes, the exact same capacity for language, love, grief, and joy, and the exact same ancestral mother who walked the African plains. Geneticists call her mitochondrial Eve. Every person alive on Earth today inherits a piece of her unbroken genetic lineage. When you look at someone with a different skin color than your own, you are not looking at a member of a different biological category. You are looking at your 50th cousin. You are looking at a family member whose ancestors simply lived under a different sun. Their skin adjusted its tint to protect their folate or synthesize their vitamin D. Their body did exactly what it was engineered to do: keep them alive. Human evolution is not a hierarchy climbing toward an ideal finished product. It is a vast, beautiful branching bush of dynamic adaptations. There is no superior skin color in the eyes of physics and biology. In the scorching sun of the equator, dark skin is supreme perfection. In the dim, overcast winter of the subarctic, pale skin is supreme perfection. And in the modern world of supermarkets, flights, and vitamin D supplements, the ancient geographic constraints that once governed our skin have vanished. A person with dark skin can live in Norway with simple vitamin D drops. A person with light skin can live in Kenya with sunscreen and a hat. Technology has liberated us from the ancient evolutionary trap. We are no longer hostages to local ultraviolet physics. We can live anywhere, build homes anywhere, and thrive together. Yet the ancient story written in our skin remains our greatest biological treasure. A reminder of where we came from, what we endured, and how we survived. We are all children of the African sun, and we are all survivors of the great journey across Earth. The next time you look at the palm of your hand, notice how the skin on your palm is lighter than the back of your hand. Even in the most deeply pigmented African populations, the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet produce very little melanin. That is the ancient primate skin that all our ancestors once shared. The baseline canvas of our species, everything layered on top of that canvas. The deep melanins of the equator, the golden undertones of the steppes, and the pale translucence of the northern farmlands is a brilliant functional brushstroke painted by natural selection. It took millions of years of sun, sweat, blizzards, and grain to engineer the magnificent variety of human beings walking on Earth today. No color is a mistake, no shade is an accident. Every single tone was a life-saving shield for a specific time and place. When you understand the science of skin, the artificial walls of racial prejudice completely dissolve. You realize that a pale person in Sweden is simply carrying the legacy of wheat. A dark-skinned person in Nigeria is carrying the legacy of the savanna sun. An Inuit in Greenland is carrying the legacy of the Arctic seal hunt. And all of us are carrying the shared legacy of a hairless running ape who conquered the heat, walked out of Africa, and colonized every corner of this magnificent blue planet. We changed our color to survive. We adapted our bodies so our children could live. We paid in soft bones, sunburns, and millennia of trial and error. And in doing so, we proved that the human species is one single undivided family, divided only by the geography of our ancestors' journeys, united by the identical biological spark within our chests. The next time you see someone with a different shade of skin, don't just see a different color. See 40,000 years of human resilience. See the ancient balance between the sun, the soil, and the blood. See the triumph of our collective survival. Remember where you came from. Remember the long road we walked to get here. Celebrate the brilliant diversity of our shared human canvas. And remember that under the skin, we are all and always will be wonderfully, beautifully one.